I might do a video on the Lord of the Rings at one point, but I wanted to do one on the Hobbit first since it came first, and I still enjoy reading this one more. I know this might be blasphemy to some of you, but I enjoy reading the Hobbit a lot. Why, you say? Well, because the main character is better than in the Lord of the Rings. I think Bilbo's better than Frodo, like by a long shot. Bilbo does more, he changes more, and he's more relatable too. Like there's more aspects to Bilbo that you can latch on to. Like Frodo, not so much. Anyways, about this book. Bilbo is a hobbit who is kind of a well-to-do, respected pillar of the community. By the end, he's not that. He's he's a recluse. He's ostracized because he's changed so much. By the end, after going on this adventure, he yearns for that feeling again of going on an adventure. So by meeting the wizard Gandalf and going off with these dwarves to reclaim their homeland from the dragon, he gets something that he never thought he'd get and never even knew he wanted. Was, you know, this lust for adventure, for journeying out and seeing new places, seeing new people, discovering new things. This was lost on him. He would just sit at home reading. I'm guilty of that. Not traveling and avoiding people for the most part, unless there was a party to go to or something, you know. But yeah, he was always just kind of stuffy. He wanted to just stay at home with his things, his books, his armchair, and then he gets called. It's the call to adventure. It's the classic tale of the call to adventure, and then the journey home. By the end, the main character comes back changed. This is a in traditional fantasy. This is a common trope, but it's effective because you want your character to change by the end. You don't want them to remain the same, because then it's like, what's the point? What's the point of the story? What's the point of the journey? And so this is the point of Bilbo's journey, because he needs a change, because he's become kind of stagnant and stuffy, and you know, people may act like they like being around him, but you can tell just by their behavior that they don't really like you know how people will say things, but say nice things to you, but they'll talk behind your back. I think a lot of that was happening with Bilbo and the Hobbit community. And then, well, in the movie, I think there was part of an extended scene where you see Sam's gaffer in the tavern with Frodo and Sam, and they're talking about how Bilbo's cracked and Frodo's cracking right along with him. They think Bilbo's gone crazy, but he's not. He's just in his own world now. He's yearning to be out there again on another adventure. So he's writing down his adventures in a book called There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Tale, which by the end of the Lord of the Rings movies, Frodo has taken up writing his own adventures, following Bilbo's way. It's kind of brought everything full circle by the end of the Lord of the Rings. So I think if you want to watch those movies, you should probably watch the Lord of the Rings first, and then the Hobbit trilogy to get the full experience. I like them both. Some people don't like the Hobbit trilogy, but I like it too. Especially the first one, because it's the introduction to the dwarves and everything. The music moves me. I just love the comedy too, and Gandalf is amazing. He's always amazing, but especially in this movie. But yeah, even the character of Gandalf is very interesting because he comes and goes as he pleases. They even say that, like, he's a wizard, he does as he chooses, and he's been put on Middle Earth to be like a guide, you know. So he doesn't even use his magic that much. He saves them from the trolls, turns the trolls into stone. But that's the only instant I can remember in the novel where he actually uses magic. He's mostly he's mostly trying to find out like who this necromancer is, and anyone who knows, you know, Middle Earth lore will know the necromancer is Sauron, just going by another name. And so while Gandalf's off, you know, finding out about the necromancer, that's when Bilbo and the dwarves get captured by the goblins, and of course this is where Bilbo falls down and finds the ring, which I'm pretty sure Tolkien was setting up the Lord of the Rings in this novel. Like, he already had an idea for where the story was going to go, so that's why he planted the ring in there, Gollum and everything, because he knew Gollum was going to play an important part, the ring was going to play an important part in the Lord of the Rings, and so Bilbo would have to come by this ring. So there's also amazing characters in this novel, like not just the dwarves, which Thorin Oakenshield, he's the one who gets the most character development out of all of them. You know, by the end, you kind of feel sorry for him. I don't want to spoil too much, but he changes too from what he was, you know. And there's a shape changer who changes into a bear. Also an interesting character. Beorn, he comes in. He's not much in the movie, but he's more in the novel. The eagles pop up in The Lord of the Rings. They're a device. They're used as a device called Deus Ex Machina, where something gets the heroes out of an impossible situation just by magic. You know, the eagles fly. Well, there is a backstory to that though. Gandalf saved the leader of the eagles from dying. Like, I think he was shot by an arrow and Gandalf healed him, something like that. So every time Gandalf is in peril, he can call upon the eagles. In the movies, he uses this moth to call upon the eagles, and they come and rescue them. So that's what happens in The Hobbit when the wargs and the goblins are after Bilbo and them. That's when they call the eagles. And then at the Battle of the Five Armies at the end, they call the eagles again. Bilbo's knocked out for pretty much the whole battle. Like, he gets knocked out and just like misses the whole thing. Then when he wakes up, everything's, a lot of people are dead. And yeah, he feels changed by the whole thing by the end. And I feel like Tolkien, when he wrote the Middle-earth stories, brought a lot of his World War I experience to the books, because at times it gets dark, really dark and bleak, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel, you know. Even in the last Lord of the Rings book, which I can understand why they cut this part out of the movies, because anyone going into the movies would say, what the hell just happened? Why would they put that in there? There's a Scouring of the Shire chapter where Frodo and everyone get home and the place is just destroyed. Like, the orcs have already gone in and scoured the Shire, which is what Frodo sees in Galadriel's mirror in the first movie. he sees the scouring of the Shire. So they kind of did put that in the movies, but they didn't want to go all out and do that, because that wouldn't have made much sense. If you wanted to tell a story where, a visual story where like good triumphs over evil every time, but in this case, in this scenario, evil kind of won, So I can understand why they cut that out. But in this book, at least, there's no ending like that. I mean, there's some death, but it's not without meaning. Like the scouring of the Shire, I feel like was something he put in there to show that, yeah, this is what war is like sometimes. It is terrible. There's no sense to it. There's not always sense to it. But The Hobbit is more hopeful, I think, than The Lord of the Rings by the end of it, at least, Because by the end, Gandalf and Bilbo, they're just, sitting around saying how fond they are of each other, and that grateful that they went on this adventure together. That they'll be, they're going to be friends for life, because in The Lord of the Rings, when Bilbo is 111, they're still friends. In this book, he's like in his 50s, I want to say, 60s, somewhere around there. But yeah, that's what I love about these books, is these characters and the way they relate to each other, the way they depend on each other. And that's the Fellowship of the Ring. That's the point of those books. Two Towers, The Return of the King. These books aren't just for fantasy fans. They're for fans of good characters, of, a good story. That's why I will always recommend The Hobbit.